Welcome to Montclair News Lab. I'm Bernice Dagua. Here's what's coming up on this week's episode. First, new bills that target transgender people.
We should be looking at those legislators who are advancing those bills.
Then we go to Patterson, where the fire department and iPads are keeping the ER from overflowing.
We're up to 200 calls a day for COVID. 200 a day in 8.44 square miles. So the telehealth system at least helped reduce that.
And later, see Montclair State's basketball team making a difference with t-shirts.
If you're just doing like the shut up and dribble rule that one of the news anchors told LeBron James, and you're part of the problem too.
All this and more on Montclair News Lab. We start with an update to a story we told you about last week. Montclair State is now saying that many summer programs will require its participants to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. That's moving up the timeline from the fall. Some examples of activities that will require the vaccine include using the Student Recreation Center, living on campus, as well as many in-person courses. For more information, you can visit the university website, montclair.edu/redhawkrestart. This year, legislation aimed at limiting transgender healthcare has been sweeping the nation, leaving an entire community at risk. Carter Winter reports on the recent spike in bills and how President Biden acknowledged trans people in his recent address to a joint session of Congress.
For all transgender Americans watching at home, especially young people, you're so brave. I want you to know your president has your back.
President Joe Biden made history by being the first president to publicly support the trans community in his first joint address to Congress. As his historic words were spoken, 20 states in the U.S. were looking at bills pushing to limit access to transition care for transgender minors. Celeste Fiore, a civil rights lawyer and the former LGBT chair of the New Jersey State Bar Association, points to a contrast between Biden's words of support and what is happening in many states.
I think that says something really horrible about our country. And I think that we should be looking at those legislators who are advancing those bills and looking at the folks that are asking ridiculous questions of children and vote them out.
In New Jersey, while there isn't any legislation pending about healthcare, there is a bill aiming to limit access to sports for transgender youth. Fiore says Republicans are behind the push for most of this legislation.
It is not an accident. If you look at the bills, they are the same text. There's just a couple of words that have been changed.
As a non-binary person, a person whose gender identity exists outside of society's gender expectations, Fiore knows the dangers that trans individuals face.
We were mostly raised that our bodies are always vulnerable and that they can always be used to hurt us. And that if you are discovered then to be somebody who was trans, that you were absolutely going to be raped and murdered.
Transgender man and MSU student Nate Longmore recognizes all that is on the line.
I think systemically, there most certainly is oppression against trans people.
Longmore, having transitioned himself, understands how hard it can be if you wait to medically transition.
I mean, it would be like knowing that you're sick and being told you have to wait 6 months to get medication for it. You know what I mean?
The impact of this legislation is felt by the trans youth in Arkansas, where this law already exists.
This really just sends a clear message to trans children that we don't want you in Arkansas. We don't see you as valid.
I think the emotional effect of being a young teenager and knowing that your state has just passed a law to only harm you, I don't know how that would affect someone emotionally.
For Nate, transitioning changed his life, but his experience has left him concerned for others in the community.
Without proper care of trans people and allowing space for people to be their authentic selves, that is how you end up with high suicide rates.
The Trevor Project, which provides crisis support services for LGBTQ children and teens, estimates that at least one LGBTQ youth between the ages of 13 to 24 attempts suicide every 45 seconds in the US.
Those same bills contradict the Hippocratic Oath, which I also don't understand how you can say do no harm and then say, but I want to be able to either actively or passively do harm to particular groups of people.
The American Medical Association recognized this concern and urged governors to oppose this legislation. The AMA said these efforts are a dangerous intrusion into the practice of medicine. Healthcare is key for the trans community, but transgender bills show no signs of slowing down. They've even made their way to New Jersey. Next week, we'll take a look at the impact of bills limiting access to athletics for the transgender community.
He's a girl, he can't play football.
For Montclair News Lab, I'm Carter Winter.
We turn now to Patterson, which found its emergency rooms overflowing during the pandemic. An innovative program developed by the fire department solved this problem and shortened the time it takes to see a doctor. Louise Ellis reports.
Attention Engine 4, Latitude Battalion 2. You respond 363 North 7th Street, Prospect Park, on a possible fire.
Patterson's fire department is on the front lines, not just in the war to save lives, but also on the front lines of innovation, thanks to the emergency telehealth system developed by Chief Brian McDermott.
Yeah, so telehealth system, basically it's FaceTime for healthcare providers. We found that we wanted to reduce the instance of transport to the hospital. How do we do that?
When St. Joseph's Hospital became overloaded with COVID patients, the chief began working side by side with doctors to create a telehealth system to connect patients with emergency room professionals. Patterson EMTs gave us a demonstration of how the system works.
So within the day hours when there's an actual doctor there, they can actually FaceTime face to face.
Patterson was the first in the country to use a system like this for emergencies. EMS Captain Michael Morrow has firsthand experience using the telehealth system to treat COVID patients.
They were a little skeptical at first, and then once our EMTs and myself and my fellow colleagues explained the program to them, they were very receptive because it was actually speaking with a physician. It was like bringing the ER to their home.
According to Chief McDermott, the telecommunication system isn't just helping patients, it's making EMTs' jobs safer.
Now, as long as they maintain that 6-foot distance without touching the victim, and they can do that telehealth from a distance. We're up to 200 calls a day for COVID. 200 a day in 8.44 square miles. So the telehealth system at least helped reduce that.
The mayor couldn't be happier with Patterson EMTs.
They were using modern technology, they were ahead of everything, and they were doing what they could to get people out of harm's way, and that's why I salute them.
The ability to help patients while staying at a safe distance helps ease the worries of EMTs that they may bring COVID back to their family or colleagues.
I've met some amazing people in my 16 years of doing this. People that I've called friends. I've lost friends, 2 of them from the pandemic itself.
Although this year has been challenging, Morrow's experience during the pandemic validates why he and his fellow first responders remain committed to their jobs.
We chose this, we love helping people, and that love of helping people helps us through the next day.
From Montclair News Lab, I'm Louise Ellers.
Montclair State's dance program is among the best in the nation, but with the pandemic, students had to find the balance between staying safe and practicing their craft. Alana Conti reports.
Three dance majors, Amanda, Gianna, and Jordan, tell their journey through these changes.
Being a senior dance major during COVID has definitely been difficult. A lot of my training has been lost. I feel like a lot of my the regularity and the structure of classes has obviously changed.
Amanda felt lost but had hope.
I guess on the bright side, teachers and dancers and people holding auditions are becoming more acclimated toward relying on digital technology.
The Montclair State University Department of Theater and Dance has found a new way to keep their students engaged and safe while also keeping in-person opportunities alive. All dance majors are required to take a COVID test each week to prevent the spread of the virus. Because of COVID, dancers have been split up into 2 cohorts.
Even though we do cohort A and B and we're switched every other week for online, I still feel like I'm growing in ways that I wasn't capable of at home.
Schedules have changed, and so has the atmosphere within the program.
Having a different schedule has really been difficult to deal with mentally, physically, encompassing everything within my training and my education.
To keep the bubble safe in Life Hall for dance majors, it is important they live on campus. Jordan came back to the dorms.
Now I am on campus, both living and taking classes, and it's definitely a better experience.
Although there are struggles, Montclair dance students are staying positive and excited for what's to come next year. All students are required to be vaccinated. And with the vaccine comes new opportunities. The plan is to have a majority of dance classes back in person next semester.
I'm hoping that next year our schedules somewhat resume back to normal, and I just can't wait to be dancing full time like I used to all the time.
Amanda, Jordan, Gianna, and so many more students in this time, dancing in new ways. For Montclair News Lab, I'm Alana Conti.
Sports teams across the country have demonstrated their demand for racial justice by kneeling and boycotting, but one Montclair State sports team is taking a different approach. Red Hawk Sports Network reporter Corey Annan has the story.
If you watched the Montclair State men's basketball team this season, you probably saw the Red Hawks wear some new t-shirts during their pregame drills. The idea for the shirts was inspired by Devin Cooper as a way to speak out against racial injustice.
I really got into the racial injustice topic back when the George Floyd incident started. You know, I was a part of a few marches, if you will, for the Black Lives Matter movement. And I really thought, like, now it was season time, you know, like, what could I do to, like, bring awareness to this topic without honestly, like, trying to step on anybody's toes for the most part.
Devin reached out to his father, James Cooper, for some help. James creates merchandise for Hoop Group, a basketball company dedicated to helping young basketball players reach the next level. To support his son and his cause, James printed the shirts for the entire team at no cost. As for the design, the team opted not to use the words Black Lives Matter on their shirts. Instead, the words black and white are crossed out with the word human in bold. The purpose behind this was to remind people that regardless of skin color, everyone is human.
It was really bringing, like I said before, bringing attention to the fact that there are racial injustices going on in this country, and that we're trying our best to at least bring attention to this topic.
The players themselves weren't the only ones to get on board with the t-shirts, as head coach Justin Potts encourages his players to use their platforms for change and always keeps his players aware of what's going on in the world.
What they were putting on, and I thought it was a great message to send, and you know, we supported it wholeheartedly, and I think it was good for our program. We have a very diverse team, you know, and I think as I try to tell the guys all the time, they have a platform that not everybody has, you know, and when you're playing a sport, especially in a pandemic where there were limited activities happening, you know, we were going to get you know, 2 games a week that were going to be, you know, put on YouTube and zoomed out there and all that kind of stuff. So it was a way to you know, show that the solidarity that we had as a program, and then also hopefully shed some light on some things we felt needed to change in the world.
Despite rising support for athletes speaking out against racial inequality, critics have maintained that athletes should stay out of politics and focus on their own sports.
If you're just doing like the shut up and dribble rule that one of the news anchors told LeBron James, and you're part of the problem too, and then in a way we'd be a part of the problem too, because our silence isn't helping anyone.
From the Red Hawk Sports Network, I'm Corey Annan.
Focus Racial Justice is a collaboration between all of the platforms at the School of Communication and Media. For more stories and our full 1-hour broadcast, visit focusracialjustice.org.
It's time for another campus point of view. This time, News Lab reporter Jack Bartek shares a view that inspires him to work towards his future.
I'm Jack Bartek, and this is my Campus POV. My goal one day is to work in sports media, and I remember when I joined my first live broadcast on campus, I was so nervous, and I got there about a half hour early, and I remember just sitting in the seats at the back of the SEM building. I looked out the windows at the city, and I just remember this calm feeling coming over me. And anytime I need to draw some inspiration, I always find myself drawn back to this spot, because as much as the view is pretty, you know, it's the hub of media, and it's the media that I want to join, and it's really cool knowing that my dreams are right there within arm's reach. This is my favorite spot on campus, and if you find yourself in some need of inspiration, maybe it'll become yours too.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Montclair News Lab, on Twitter at MSU News Lab, and make sure to catch up with us on our website at montclairnewslab.tv. That's all for this week's episode of Montclair News Lab. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next week for a brand new episode. Until then, I'm Bernice Dagwa. Stay safe out there.